Okay, welcome everybody. I'm so excited to have you here, whether you're live in a masterclass or watching the recording. I'm really excited to have you here. My name is Simone. I'm the owner of Rooted in Between, which was founded because of my own personal journey. I want to keep the introduction fairly short. This is a longer masterclass because I want to be able to give you as much resources as possible with what I'm teaching. So again, I want to keep this intro fairly short. I'm a trained internal family systems practitioner. If you want to learn more about my other qualifications and all the coaching I've been doing over the years, you can visit my website, rootedinbetween.com. But I would rather actually like to share with you why I'm here today to share this information with you. So the information and tools that I'm sharing with you today is part of what helped me through one of the most difficult times in my life, where I tried to make sense of many things after a very sudden Kundalini crisis and a very abrupt awakening. And if you want to learn more about that, you can also go onto my website, rootedinbetween.com. In the About section, there is a link to a YouTube video if that interests you in any sort. If not, don't worry about it. So, but it was the concept of the internal family systems that helped me see myself in a different way, life as well as other people. And it also what keeps helping me as I'm evolving and moving through dissolving my own conditioning, facing my traumas, and really return to who I really am at a core level. And I know I was led to this modality of IFS, not by mistake. And I was then guided to become a trained practitioner after realizing how this type of approach on a life skill basis, on a life skill level, is a missing link for many people that are trying to heal. And it's the first modality that made sense in the situation I was in for myself. It's important to know that I'm not a therapist or counselor. I'm not a licensed mental health professional. So I'm sharing this from a life coaching perspective to integrate the skills of the internal family systems into daily life and as shadow work, as making the unconscious conscious in a very effective way so it can lead you forward on a daily basis as you're working with things. So without further ado, let's get this started. Let's get going. And yeah, let's move into this. Now, my work or the internal family systems modality maybe for you if you resonate with the things that you're seeing here on the screen. Now, in this class, I'll let you know in just a moment kind of what we're going to go through. And if you watch the recording and you want to email me if you have any comments about the class, or if you resonate with those things, or you want to know more about my coaching programs, please just reach out to me. But yeah, like if you're the kind of person where you're finding yourself often feeling like consumed or overwhelmed by your emotions on a regular basis, maybe you struggle with negative self-talk, you're constantly worrying or stressed, or just this general overwhelm that daily life can bring us. Maybe you're somebody that is very hypervigilant, or you're struggling with rumination, and you find yourself stuck in those repetitive patterns, right? And experiences where you just feel like, why does life keep bringing me the same thing over again? Like, where's my lesson? And that's where shadow work is all about, right? So, and also if you find yourself often overly affected or triggered by other people's actions and reactions, and you just can't shake it, or you have a difficult time shake it, IFS can definitely be for you, because it's really a way of helping you process those things and understand better what's going on for yourself, and also on the level of other people sometimes. So if you're looking for like increased self-awareness and self-compassion, reduced emotional overwhelm, more nervous system regulation, if you want to improve your relationships and your interpersonal skills, and if you want more increased connection and taking action from your authentic self, if you want to start healing your inner child, your traumas, IFS, the skills of IFS, especially as a life skill approach, may definitely be for you. So what you can expect from this masterclass is an introduction to IFS, what its core concepts are and beliefs are, and how the skills from it, again, potentially could help you. We'll also do a wonderful 20-minute meditation, and we'll do some practical exercises as well, where I'll guide you through it to give you a glimpse on some of the practical aspects of what these skills could look like, how you can work with those parts of you that you would consider shadows, potentially in a new way. And I'll give you more ideas on how you can expand this masterclass if it resonates. Again, I am not a licensed mental health professional. I am somebody that is on a similar path as you potentially. I'm in the middle of my healing journey, and I'm not here to lecture something. I simply have learned some skills that have greatly helped me and decided to be professionally trained in it so I can actually share this with others, with all the skills that I've learned over the last 11 years of coaching people. Consider me to be a guide and space holder to help you explore and befriend your shadows while I'm walking alongside you and lead you to become your own space holder for yourself. So let's just get into this. Let's just get going. Like, what is IFS? The Internal Family Systems Therapy is an evidence-based approach to psychotherapy, bridging spirituality with psychotherapy. And that is really what resonated so much with me. Because again, we are spiritual beings in a human body. We are both. We need to consider our energetic aspect, and we also have to work with our brain and our body. So it's really a mind, body, soul approach. IFS is a transformative tool that conceives of every human being as a system of protective and wounded inner parts, led by a core self, which you would consider your true self, your higher self, your soul, etc. And together, these parts and the higher self, which we're going to talk about, they make up your internal family system. And again, more to that in a second. So this has nothing to do with your external family per se. This is about self-discovery. This is about self-realization. And while IFS is not inherently a somatic practice, it contains aspects of somatic work and how our emotions and our body interact with each other, which is an important skill, right, to learn. Additionally, incorporates what you would call shadow work, inner child work, and concepts of shamanic practices compared to soul retrieval, as well as working with the 5 elements. And it can also contain other spiritual aspects, as well as addressing generational and ancestral trauma. So it doesn't matter whether you consider yourself spiritual or religious. This is really about how does it resonate with you, right? If you believe in some sort of energetic makeup of us, our soul, this can definitely resonate with you. So what is the goal? What is the goal of IFS coaching? The goal is to liberate our parts that we're going to talk about from their extreme roles so they can shift into their authentic way of functioning, helping to regain trust in our higher self, in our self-leadership, and to achieve balance and harmony and wholeness of our whole entire system and soul makeup, so we can engage with our inner and outer world from a heart-centered place. So again, IFS conceives of every human being as a system of protective and wounded inner parts led by a core self, true self, higher self, your soul, your energetic makeup, etc. And together they make up your internal family system. IFS believes that the mind is naturally formed in different sub personalities in a good way. More to that a little bit later. Viewing the intrapsychic process of a dynamic system and recognizing the core essence of self. And IFS helps people access and heal their protective parts, or what you can consider the destructive and repetitive patterns and traits, and heal their wounded inner parts by first helping to reconnect to the authentic self, which is super, super important. And then from that place, come to understand and heal these parts. And oftentimes, when we think of our shadows or these repetitive patterns and behaviors that we're having, that is our conditioning, right? It's like that is how we grew up. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. But you can also think of it like it's about healing our shadows, healing our conditioning, and coming back to ourselves, who we really are at our core. So we're going to go explore these different forms of parts together. And we're going to start with the self, and then we'll do a wonderful 20-minute meditation. So get comfy for that later, before we then go into the other parts. So to understand the self, we are all born with a core self, a higher self, a true essence, an open heart space. And from this place, that's where we feel what would be considered the 8 C's: calmness, compassion, curiosity, confidence, courage, creativity, clarity, and connectedness. And of course, there's other traits such as love and kindness. They're also parts of ourself. Our higher self is this joyful, all-knowing part that is excited about life and about the experience on earth. And together with ourself, we are born with different parts and traits that make up our own personality, right? That's our soul essence. We're having all these different parts that make up our individual personality. So how we individually express ourselves. And when we are first born with these parts and qualities, generally they all function harmoniously with the guidance of our higher self. And they're expressing themselves authentically. But this may change as we grow up very quickly because of our conditioning. Now, before we're going to talk about other parts, I want to start simply with a meditation. It's a beautiful 20-minute grounding meditation. It's a version of a meditation that was developed by the founder of IFS, where in this meditation, you're going to get a chance to kind of feel the sensation of what self may feel like for you. I think, some of us are very heart-centered and grounded already. We know exactly what self feels like to us. Like, what does that core heart center, this true authentic self actually feel like? And for others, they don't even really know, or they're not quite sure because they have a really hard time accessing that space. So I think it's very important that we know for ourselves what it can feel like. Now, I want to mention that IFS doesn't work that way. IFS is not based on meditation. This is really just me giving you a chance to experience some calmness and just settling in. This is also a meditation that is part of my newsletter. But it's usually, we can experience self when we really can access meditation. Now, it might, or like a meditative space, basically. We can't live in only self in that sense. It is really a spaciousness that we can experience, but it's important that we know what it feels like for us, so we know whether or not we're acting from self when we are interacting with the world, or if we're interacting from parts, those are also things that my coaching programs include is really helping you learn to always go back to self as you're interacting with the world, as you're making decisions. And working with your parts from that place, that being in self and acting through self in the world is one of the most important things, I think, to really live our authentic life. And it's so easy to get distracted by the world and just having parts take over. Anyways, so just to give you a quick idea, like for me, for example, self feels like a very calm space. There is no chatter in my head. It's very quiet. It's very centered. It's very still. I have no tension in my body. My nervous system feels absolutely calm. It's clear. My mind is clear. I know exactly who I am. I know exactly what I'm here for. It's a place that everything makes sense. Everything makes sense. And incorporating that into our daily life is super important. And I think a lot of us, again, have a really hard time accessing that space. So keeping that in mind, we can't really act from our heart center if we don't know what it truly feels like. So again, we're just going to go ahead, and this meditation is for you to hopefully get a sense of yourself. Now, for some of you, you may go through the meditation and you're able to fully relax and actually experience that self. And for some of you, you may just get a glimpse. It doesn't matter. Whatever it is okay. So let's just do this together.
Hi, my name is Simone, and I'm excited to be guiding you through this meditation to help you get in a place to experience your authentic self or heart space. We can often be disconnected from this place, and sometimes we don't even know what feeling we're looking for. This meditation can guide you towards what it feels like for you and what state you want to look for more often as you start recognizing your own authentic self or your heart space. So wherever you are right now, get comfortable. I recommend sitting up in an upright way if that's available to you, but don't sit too stiff. Just be comfortable. If that's not available to you, you can of course lie down. Whatever feels best for you at this moment. If you can, place your feet on the floor, and if you'd like, you can close your eyes if you want. Or if you prefer to leave them open, you can just let your eyes rest with a soft, gentle gaze in front of you. Start to notice your breath, the breath in and the breath out. And just once again, in and out. And if your mind begins to wander, right now or throughout the meditation, know that that's natural and there's no judgment. Just gently draw your attention back to your breath. Now focus inward, and I invite you to, in your mind's eye, put yourself at the base of a path or a trail. It could be one you have already been to, or it could be a path or trail that's totally new to you. Wherever you like, just in your mind's eye, picture the base of a path or a trail. And then at the base of this path, meet with your parts. And by your parts, consider that to be all the thoughts and sensations that are currently present within your body right now or have been throughout the day. Maybe there are some specific worries or fears or beliefs. You can also just take a moment and just feel into your body what is present right now. Sensations, emotions, what is there right now for you? And if it helps, you can picture these parts in a way that makes sense to you. You can picture a sensation or thought looking like a different version of you, maybe a different person where you at a different age, or maybe your parts look like orbs of light or colored shapes in and around your body. Maybe they're a collection of feelings or emotions. However you sense your parts for this exercise, gather them all up and meet with them all at the base of the path. As you notice them in and around your body, ask them if they would be willing to wait there at the base for you and let you go on a brief journey by yourself. Just for a little bit. Just ask them as if you were talking to someone. You can do this silently inside or use your voice. As you ask, notice how the parts respond. You may notice some of your parts react to that idea, and just observe for a moment how they react. Some may not like the idea of you going to journey by yourself. Others may be okay with it. And you can try to see if those who are afraid to let you go can be comforted by those who aren't. And let them all know that you won't be gone for long, that you will be back soon, and that this would be good for them and for you. And see how they respond. You may notice sensations coming up in your body, maybe thoughts. That could be a way of how they respond to you. Now, they don't have to let you do this if they're not ready at this time. It just depends on the day. Someday, they may be okay with this, and some days they may not be up for it. And that's natural. It's normal. There are no judgments. It is what it is, and it's okay. And if they're not up for it, don't push them to do it. You can spend time just getting to know them better and understand their fears of you going away, and ask them more about that. However, if they are up for it, then go ahead and head out on the path. just start walking along the path. Maybe it's a path in the forest or a path on the beach. Just a path that's in your mind and that makes the most sense to you. Now, I want to invite you to just notice what's happening as you continue on the path and walk along and start looking around, observing the path. In particular, notice if you're thinking anything at all. Because if you're thinking, that means that there are still some parts with you. Ask them if they would be willing to separate and go back with the others to the base of the path. If they're okay with that, it can help if you in your mind's eye can see or visualize them as they head back. But if they're not okay with leaving you, ask, what's their fear? You can also scan your body for anything that doesn't feel quite like you as yourself, who you are at your essence, who you are at your core. Notice for sensations in your body, tension, pain, and so forth. And if you find anything that also is likely to be a part, and you can ask it to return to the base. If you feel you need a moment, you can pause the meditation to talk with your parts and resume when they all headed back to the base. And if the parts you are finding are willing to return to the base, you should gradually notice yourself more and more just as pure awareness, without a lot of thought. And if the parts aren't willing to leave you, that's fine. You can just spend time getting to know their fears. Even maybe asking them if they could just follow you along on the path at a distance, separated from your body, just as observers. If at any point on this path you find yourself watching yourself, taking this journey, seeing your body walking on the path versus seeing the path through your own eyes, that means there's a part trying to do it for you and walk the path for you. Ask yourself, who is watching? Ask that part to go to the base too, so that you're on the path and you don't see yourself, but you just see the surrounding scenery as a direct first person sort of view through your own eyes. If your parts are really trusting you to do this, then by now you should be experiencing some of the qualities of yourself, your authentic self. Clarity, the absence of thought, spaciousness, presence, and a centered sense of being connected, being in your body, and so on. You may also sense a kind of vibrating energy running through your body. We call that self-energy. If you feel that energy, I invite you to run it throughout your body. If you notice any places where the energy can't flow, it's likely there's a part blocking it for some reason. So you can see if that part will go back to the base too. If you're not feeling some of these things, it means there are parts still with you, and you can scan your body and your mind to see if you can find those parts and ask if they will go back to the base. But also know it's okay if not all parts are willing to leave you. And you can reassure them that there's no judgment. But as you notice parts separating from you, take a breath. Then just pause and take notice what it's like to have this much self in your body. Notice the different ways you can feel it, as well as how and where self-energy manifests and reveals itself in and around your body. It's important to remember these markers. That's how you can tell within your body as you go throughout your day. You can tell how much of you, your authentic self, is there, or how much your parts are running the day. You can often check how open your heart is, or whether you're in your head thinking, pressure in your shoulders or forehead. If you catch any of these parts while at work or during the day, you can ask them to relax and go back to the base and watch. Just say hello to them and let them know that they're there, and ask them to just step back for a little while. Tell them that you can handle whatever you're facing at that time. Just let those parts know that they can trust you. Some of them may need to give you some advice before they're willing to go back. And they may have something to tell you, and that's okay. Make space to listen and acknowledge, and then have them wait for you to check back in with them. Now, if you're feeling a lot of self-energy at this moment within your body, I want to give you the option of inviting any messages from God, Source, or the universe. Maybe something comes through, maybe nothing comes through, and that's okay. Some people will sometimes get some clear guidance at a point like this. You can ask if there is anything you need to know right at this moment, or you can just listen. Now at this time, I'm going to invite you to head back to the base of your path at whatever pace feels right. Maybe you'll take the same path back. Maybe it will be a different path. When you get back to your parts, see how they react to your return, and thank them for whatever risk they took to let you do this. Ask what it's been like for them, and check to see if they'll be up for letting you try it again sometime. Remind them once again that you want to help them and that your goal is to earn their trust. If any of them haven't trusted you for any reason, you're open to knowing about that and making repairs. If you're still holding any tingling self-energy, you can extend it to your parts. And you'll find it very healing, and that you can actually direct it to your parts and to other people. If you're able to do this last piece, just notice how your parts react to receiving the self-energy you have to offer them. Once all that feels complete, thank your parts once again for whatever portion of this exercise they allowed you to be part of, and begin to start shifting your focus back outside. And also see if you can hold some of this state of self-energy even as you begin to focus on your breath again. Start feeling your body and your feet on the floor. Feel the space surrounding you. And when you're ready, open your eyes and welcome back.
So I hope this meditation gave you a little bit of an idea of what self can feel like for you. If not, don't worry about it. It's all good, but it's really grounding into the class. So we're going to talk about our wounded parts and our protective parts, and then we're also going to do some shadow exploration together. So let's start with the wounded parts. Again, when we are first born, these parts and qualities that we have, that we come with, generally function harmoniously with the guidance of our self. And they are expressing themselves authentically, right? When you think of a small child, they just express themselves authentically, and that's what we do. And as we grow up, in fact, very quickly, even as small children, and living in a society where we're influenced by different outside sources, such as family dynamics, societal structures, passed down genetics, traumas, epigenetics, all these things, we are very quickly influenced. And if our childhood basic needs for connection and protection aren't met, and we don't have caregivers that can help us process our painful experiences, we are then left with wounded parts that hold painful emotions. something that happens to many, many of us, right? Because we rely on our caregivers to meet our needs when we are children. And we learn to push these feelings away in an attempt to connect and fit in and meet our basic survival needs. Because oftentimes as children, because our caregivers may be overwhelmed themselves, they're dealing with their own things, we learn that our authentic expression is not safe. So, and when that happens and we learn to push our feelings away, we push our self away, our higher self. We push our soul, our self out of the way because our internal system has determined that authentic expression isn't safe. And as an adult, we may experience these emotions that we have coped with in ways as they're listed on the slide. So we may, go into behaviors such as codependency. We consistently experience loneliness throughout our life, even if we're surrounded by people. We feel this inherent lack of safety, shame, grief, worthlessness, terror, fear, neediness, and a lot of these things we push away as much as we can, but that's exactly why we are then stuck in those repetitive patterns in the same type of relationships, in the same type of work, jobs, just things keep coming up over and over again because we push these things away. Often our wounded parts are childhood wounds, but not all of them. It's not exclusive, but oftentimes they are. So because of the experiences as children, we then create protective mechanisms, right, to cope with our surroundings. The creative coping mechanisms that we develop as children to ensure safety in the world are called protectors by IFS. Their job is to make sure that we aren't rejected or that the intense emotions of our childhood wounds aren't overwhelming us. Because even as adults, they would leave us incapable of functioning properly in the world, or leave us, again, having the fear that we're not accepted if we would have these intense emotions come out. And that is what creates self-abandonment. Those strategies in the long run really leave us never getting our needs truly met because they are reactionary and they are suppressing our real desires and authenticity in disguise for connection. Like that is self-abandonment. I do want to mention that many protective strategies in part form are also younger than our current age, depending what age they were developed. And from their perspective, they are seeing us still as an incapable child, which is who they are protecting. They're not protecting us as an adult. They are trapped in the past, just like our childhood wounds. So our shadows are trapped in the past, right? And that's why a lot of those are familiar with shadow works, those patterns that we have created are really past experience that are just replaying themselves. So what happens to us on a day-to-day basis is the concept of blending and is related to how we operate in our parts. It means that during the time where we are blended, we don't have access to our heart space or our higher self if our parts react from a protective or wounded space. Now, blending isn't always unhealthy. If we blend with our natural part, that is, for example, good at organizing, and we stay connected to our heart center, our part is basically governed by self. And that's totally fine. That's how we normally function. We always function in some sort of part. Again, our part as we come with into the world, our parts, authentically, that's our individual soul makeup. So we all have different gifts that we come with and different strengths that we come with. And as long as they function harmoniously, everything's great. But oftentimes in this case of blending, when it comes to our wounding, we often blend with our protective parts. So as an example, Somebody may ask you a very general question about a topic, and for some reason, your reaction is proportionally irrational. And you may react in a snippish way or in a dismissive way. Or maybe you just have an underlying feeling of this is triggering you. And that means the reaction, so let's say the snippy response you gave, is you acting from a protective part. But you're blended with that part. You don't notice your overreaction in that moment. When we blend with our traumatized parts, it can be very obvious. There might be hysterical crying, there may be panic attacks, extreme despair. Generally, there's some emotional overwhelm. But many people unknowingly and unconsciously live blended in their protective parts for a large portion of their life because it's literally what brought them through life since they were children. And that is what is often called conditioning. Our conditioned self, or you can refer again to it as your shadows. Some of them you may be aware of, and others you're not. So you may say, well, that's just me. I'm hot headed, but maybe it's just a protective version of you. Blending often pops up in daily situation when you look at them from an adult perspective or like from a grounded, self-centered perspective. They make no sense. Again, like why did your body freeze all of a sudden, or you got defensive because someone acted a little bit grumpy towards you, when in reality it had nothing to do with you. But for your protective parts, because it reminds them of a past traumatizing experience, that's why you react like that. And at times we have no control over. That's part of the work, is learning to recognize when we are in those parts, when we are blended, so we can change our reactions. And again, those are the things that I incorporate in my coaching programs, is really learning, when are we in self? When are we in our protective parts? How do we unblend and go back into self so that we can actually react from our heart space, or we can change how we live our life? We can change how we see the world. How can we actively do that on a daily basis? And how can we learn it as a skill? Because it is a skill that has to be developed. But again, these parts that blend with you, they're here to protect you. And they often don't even give you a chance to react from a mature, centered way to the situation. And instead they just project onto the other person. And maybe the other person's grumpiness came from their protective part. And these coping strategies or shadows prevent us from living a fulfilling life, keeping us stuck in a negative, destructive patterns of all sorts, just to protect us from feeling our traumas. And again, a part of IFS skills, which I think one is of the most important skills, is to consciously learn to recognize when we are overtaken by our parts, being able to unblend and to consciously access our authentic self, so that we're then able to not only act, but also receive from that place. But before we can do that, we have to be able to recognize our parts for what they are and start learning about them and creating a relationship from our authentic self, from a place of compassion for them and their role that they have been playing for you. Once we have more of an understanding and awareness, we can then learn to consciously unblend, reconnect to self, and then actively change the patterns to create new safe experiences. And that's the work. But it actually starts by accessing the parts, and also understand that none of your parts, none of your shadows, and none of your what you can call ego is bad. None of it is bad. It all has been bringing you to where you are today and it's been protecting you. We have to learn to accept and love, or accept all of us. And this is the work that we need to do with ourselves to really shape that future in our life. It's hard, but it's doable. And I think it's a lifelong task. So let's do an exercise here. Now that you've heard all about IFS and you might wonder, okay, how do I know if I'm in a part? How do I I access myself, like my true self and all that. So have you ever heard someone say, a part of me feels like XYZ? Or some people may say, an aspect of me or a side of me feels like that. Or have you ever wondered where all your thoughts come from? That inner voice or sensations that communicate with you? Some call it ego. These are likely your parts coming through, and they can be very contradictory at times because there may be more than one at play. And again, truth is we're always in some sort of part. But when they're governed by the quality of self, so they're functioning in harmonized way, um, then we actually make progress. So we want to recognize when we are acting and reacting from a part. So I want to do this exercise with you to give you a basic idea of how you can connect to a part or spot a part. Sometimes we're not able to do that in the heat of a moment, when things happen, but we can always do it later if we want to and just see what actually was happening inside of us, especially if we recognize that we reacted in a way that maybe later felt like it wasn't necessarily your best self, or how you would react again if you've had a clear mind or if you've acted from self. So in this exercise, you can just follow along in your mind, or you can actually write it down. Grab something to write. It's up to you. And here's the thing, we're going to do a little dive into it. It's a little bit different when you're just watching this recording. We're not going to be able to really dive deep into things necessarily, or you may not experience things as nuanced as if you really learned more of the detailed concept and how to apply it to yourself. But I really just want to give you a little bit of an idea of how we dive into things through IFS. So we're just gonna kind of go into the beginning process of accessing a part that you're interested in exploring, or something that's come up for you, and then we're gonna see if you can access self, or what's gonna be happening if you're gonna be trying to access self as you're working from a part. So first, I want you to simply think of a recent situation. Nothing too extreme for this example, maybe something that happened at work or at home, something that elicited some sort of emotional response from you that you felt in your body or in your mind. Maybe you had a conversation with somebody that you felt a little bit triggered. Maybe you tried to, get a task done and you got really frustrated. Your nervous system got really activated. Maybe you noticed that you're randomly upset at your child, even if they didn't do anything, right? Whatever you would feel like, pick something that you would like to explore and learn more about, where it actually may be coming from. And this will also give you an idea of how can we learn to recognize parts, right? Because again, it's a skill. We're so mind-based as people and so up in our heads a lot of time. It's a skill to learn to really feel how our parts also express themselves. And also understand that your parts can come through in different ways. Okay, as we're talking, some people, as we're connecting in parts, some people just experience them in their body. Other people don't experience them in their body at all at first. For some people, they hear things, like they literally feel like they're hearing like something talk inside of them. Some people see pictures. Some people get sensations around their body. Some people see orbs or shapes. It doesn't matter. This is a great way for you to explore, how do things show up for me? And really pay attention to that. So let's get started with this, okay? I want you to take a couple deep breaths. Close your eyes if you would like. Keep them open, whatever you would like. Go inwards. And I want you to think back to that scenario that you just picked out. And I want you to focus on your body. Really bring yourself back to that situation that you're just envisioned, that you picked out, that you wanted to explore. and kind of replay it a little bit inside of you. And then I just want you to feel into your body. Where in your body or around your body do you notice it? Do you notice something that's tight in your body when you think of that? Do you notice a pressure somewhere in and around your body? Whatever you feel into the area of your body where you notice it. If you need, pause the recording and give yourself a moment to really feel, and then write it down if you would like to. So once you have that, once you're like, okay, I really feel this knot in my stomach, or I feel this tingling in my chest, or I notice I clench my hands, or I feel this pressure around my body, whatever it is, I want you to focus on that sensation, on that part, however it shows up for you, and really be with that sensation. Maybe you just feel like your mind gets overwhelmed. Whatever it is, there's nothing wrong. Everything is perfect. And then focus on that sensation. See if it's telling you a name. Maybe it has a color. Maybe it has a shape. Whatever comes to you first at the very moment, maybe it says something to you. Whatever comes to your mind first or into your field first, the way you experience, is the right answer. Try not to overthink. Don't go into your mind for that. Go with whatever comes up and write it down if you want. Again, pause this recording if you need a moment. And now, when you focus on this sensation, how it shows up for you, does it show you images? Does it show you words? Other sensations? If so, write it down. Is it giving you a memory? Is there a flash coming up of yourself at a different age? And just be with it. And if it does show you something, we have the first connection to a part. So that's great. Now the next step, once we have the connection to a part, our next goal is always to connect to our self space. And if we're not used to doing that, it can be a little bit tricky, and it also may bring up other parts. But the goal is to now, and we're going to try this a little bit, and we can give it a try. Again, there's much more nuance to it when you're guided to it, or when you have more practice already of experiencing your parts and learning about them and learning unblending, which is all part of my coaching programs where we really learn these skills. But our next step is to connect to ourself, and then from there to connect to the part. Because to really connect and work with our parts and transmute them and give them the space and, feel their feelings and all these things, if we're not doing it from our true self, we're not getting the connection and the healing that we need. So in this next step, as you're with that part, I want you to see, or not see, feel. How do you feel towards that part? Now, here's an important part. We don't want to force ourselves or try to force ourselves into our authentic self. We need to work with what comes up. Now, if you feel curiosity, if you feel calmness, if you're like, oh, I really want to learn more about this part, or if you feel very compassionate towards it, if you feel like, oh my God, like I really want to know more. Oh my God, I never knew that Me, snapping at my child was connected to this memory. It just brought me up as a child. Oh my God. If you feel any kind of compassion like that, then that means you are in self. And from there, we would further explore. But it is very likely that this is not what's happening right away. You may be like, wow, I'm really frustrated right now. Or I'm angry. Or I'm like, this is annoying. Whatever. Maybe you're really sad. Anything like that means there is another part that is coming in. Okay? There's another part that's coming in that has something to say, and that's normal. Because you may have a part, let's just take an example of like you are getting really frustrated right now. So that means you have a frustrated part that's coming up. You're like, okay, start connecting with that part. Be like, I can see you. I can see you. I can see that frustrated part. Okay. Give it a moment and even ask, like, and you can do that internally in your mind. You can do it out loud, whatever works for you. Say, okay, what are you frustrated about right now? And it might give you an answer. And if it makes sense to you that it will be frustrated about that, let it know. Say to it. And, sometimes we're like, you're literally talking to yourself in your mind and be like, yeah, that would make sense. I hear you. Thank you for letting me know about this. And here's where we're going to start to try to unblend. And some parts may let you do that and others are not ready. So we want to start to unblend. And to unblend, we would ask this frustrated part that came in and just be like, hey, I see you and I hear you. I want to learn more about you, but right now I really want to connect to that initial part that showed up. Would you, frustrated part, be willing to just take a step back and just give me a little bit more space so I can connect to that other part? And the frustrated part may be like, nope, absolutely not. And it might talk to you, or it may just, the sensation of frustration may just not go away. In that case, that means we need to actually turn towards the frustrated part and work with that part first. If it gives you space, then you would either notice that the frustration kind of lets go, or it may fit, like you may see in your mind's eye, it actually stepping back. You can ask it, can you just give me a little bit of space? Can you step back? You may just notice a shift for yourself that this part is letting go a little bit. And sometimes they need some reassurance. You can also let it know, like, hey, you don't need to fully go away. You're allowed to observe this. You're allowed to step back in any time you want. But right now, can you give me a little bit of space? Again, if it doesn't step away, then that means now we have to turn towards that part and basically start at the beginning and feel into that part and go back to where we started. And for the sake of time in this exercise, we're not going to go fully, we can't go in there. But if this part actually does step away, then we turn towards the initial part that you wanted to explore. And that's where we're going to go deeper into exploring that and building a connection. So you would ask yourself again, like, okay, how do I feel towards that part now? You may have another part come in, you may have and there could be all these different parts, and you'd be like, oh my God, why do I have all these different parts? Like, how, that's a thing. All these different parts come in because they are protecting something likely. They may not be ready to go in where you actually wanted to go, and that's okay. And we start to work with all these parts. And again, that's all parts of learning the IFS skills applied to yourself. How do I work with these parts so that I eventually can go to the healing, right? So we always want to make sure we connect to the part that needs the most attention, making sure that we are in self and finding out what these parts then do for us, why it's doing this. So when you are in self and you can connect to a part from self, from like, okay, I'm in this calm space, you can ask the part, what are you doing for me? What is it that you're doing for me? And you can even, let's say you would turn to the frustrated part and you're like, okay, how do I feel towards the frustrated part? You may feel annoyed, then you have an annoyed part, or you may be like, oh, I'm really curious. Once you connect to that, you can ask the frustrated part, why are you doing this for me? What is your job? Okay. But understand that without being connected to self, to your authentic self, they may not be willing to share. And that's where it can be tricky. And that's where sometimes, doing this with somebody guiding you can be very helpful. So when we are connected to self and we continue the process, it usually leads us to the root cause. And from there, we continue to start meeting the needs and resolve the worries it may have from deep down. Doing even just exploration work like this, like naturally, when we are connecting to our parts from self, it creates naturally more calmness in our whole system. Because one of the reasons sometimes our emotions are so overwhelming is because our parts are trying to tell us something and they're asking for help. They're looking for help. And by opening up the space and giving them opportunities to be seen and understood, and for them to know that our self is still here, we are still here, and that we are ready to start listening to what our whole system really needs, then these protective parts naturally become calmer. That's when we then can actually start the healing process. It's so important to understand that a lot of people, we always want to go down to the root cause right away, go into the root cause, pull it out, and that's it. As long as we have protective parts that do not trust our authentic self to be trustworthy and to stick around, and that we are capable adults of leading ourselves and protecting our inner children, it will come back over and over again. Okay. And again, so again, we really just scratched the surface, and this was just a very basic idea of how you can notice parts and understand these parts, etc. And also understand that these parts, these sensations that you experience in your body, these reactions that you have, they are not yourself. So if they are not your true self, that also means they're not your true harmonized you. That means they can change back to normal functioning with the right work, and that you're not a slave to dysregulation that they may cause you at times. And that's something I really experienced once I was able to really connect to self and work with my parts. My system relaxed in a way that I had never experienced before. And I'm able to regulate so much quicker again. And that is what then causes that more nervous system regulation. So before we move into the end of this whole class, I want to acknowledge that we may have just slightly, for some of you, opened up a Pandora's box, and you can potentially feel a little bit activated right now, as the parts that we just called forward may be eager to share more with you. So I want to do a very quick 1-2 minute meditation to acknowledge the parts and create some space for yourself again. Okay. So once again, close your eyes for a moment if it feels right. Put your hand onto the area of your body where you just felt that part, that initial part that came up, or whatever part comes up for you, to give them some extra recognition. Or you can just internally place some attention to this area with the intention of feeling that part. And in your mind, with intention, just follow my words. Hey part, if it told you a name, frustrated emotion, you can name it. You can call it by such. If it was an angry part, for example, you can say, hey, angry part. And simultaneously keep attention on that part of the body. Hey, angry part. Thank you for showing up today and helping me see you. I know you're here, and I know there are some things that you want to share with me. I see that you've been working really hard in the past to make yourself known, and I'm sorry I haven't been able to listen to you yet. I'm not going to be able to fully listen to you today, but I will do my best to pay more attention when you show up again, and hopefully we can connect again in the future so I can learn more about you. For now, I ask you to please soften back a little bit so I can continue to learn in this class that is all about you and all the other parts. And to all the other parts of me that have shown up, that are also waiting to connect with me. Thank you for making yourself known today. You're important too. But I ask you as well that in this very moment, soften back until I'm able to reconnect with you. Thank you. And before you open your eyes, take a couple more deep breaths into the area of your body where you felt those parts. Send them some gratitude for showing up today. Make you aware of where some healing is needed. And then just come back. So, feel free to take a screenshot of this slide if you'd like as a reference. This is about really daily life skills with IFS. What's the goal? What are we doing? Like steps to return to yourself. Pause this recording if you need to as well. But discovering our parts and that we actually have parts is really the first step, followed by additional steps and skills in relating towards our parts and move towards balance and regulation and healing. A lot of healing is done by exploring and connecting to our parts. From their perspective, we and our authentic self may not have been present for a really long time. So they don't trust. And we have to reestablish this relationship and show them that we are really here to listen. This is also what creates self-compassion. This is what creates self-acceptance. This is what creates integration of all our different parts. And we need to be able to connect to self. So one of my goals is to teach you all these steps connecting to self and all these further skills in a digestible way, so you can literally start integrating it into daily life and just make it part of your self-healing journey, so you can learn to process things and heal things as they happen in regular life. One saying in IFS is to basically encourage people to become a self-led therapist to themselves. So teaching you processing skills that heal your parts. And with extended IFS skills for daily life from a life skills perspective, and the more you're actually able to consciously go into self and tend to your own parts, the more you can start healing yourself and bring more ease and calmness to your whole system and your nervous system and your mind. You will slowly be able to start reparenting yourself and start meeting your own needs that we often have been seeking to be met from the outside world. Through your own skills and your own awareness, you'll be able to start relating to the world in a different way, instead of just getting stuck in trapped patterns, emotions, causing the same negative experiences over and over again. You'll also be able to improve your relationships and communication skills, because you'll also learn that other people react from their parts too. Being able to integrate these skills into daily life will really open up the doors for true deep healing, as you will be able to learn to tend to your own parts and start soothing and healing yourself. You will better know how to process your feelings and emotions when activated, which will help causing symptoms and triggers to be less intense over time. There are some very specific actions and steps that you can develop, and I can teach you so much more beyond what we've been able to just do today, right? So going back to my own experience when I started IFS, I was in a place where I needed to make changes for myself fast. And I quickly noticed that just like I started just with, therapy sessions, private sessions, which was great and fantastic. And I needed them at that point. But I realized very quickly that it just wasn't enough for me, because I felt I could only tackle so much just in private sessions. And at that time, it would still leave me feeling like there was so much more I needed to process all the time, because there were so many things that came up. So that's where I started simply almost like imitate my own IFS sessions on my own, between sessions. And I quickly realized that what I was doing in between sessions was really moved me forward so much faster. And it allowed me then, in the private sessions that I still had, dive much deeper to where trauma healing was needed. And with that, I realized that I must not be the only one. And I also got the feedback from the people that I've worked with since I've become a practitioner, that it was what they were able to do, like, in their daily life, what really made the difference, and how they were able to look at their life differently. So again, it just confirmed to me again that the importance of knowing how to utilize this all on your own, so life doesn't always feel so overwhelming, and we can process in real time and start getting some relief from these repetitive, repeating patterns and move forward in our life. So if you're interested in exploring this work more and diving deeper, um, I would love to hear from you. You can join my group program. You can work privately with me through other avenues. You can find my services on my website. My goal is to give you very applicable and highly effective skills for your daily life to start processing and healing what has been holding you back on your own. And if you desire to dive deeper with private sessions in IFS to work on with specifically traumatized parts, there is also an option for that. So thank you so much for watching this. I hope this was insightful for you. Again, if you want to learn more, come find me at rootedinbetween.com or find me on social media at rootedinbetween. And I hope to connect with you.